Identity crisis. Geordi's investigation of a missing colony leads to some unexpected transformations.
We begin with a found footage investigation of a deserted starbase by an away team that includes Geordi. They are unable to figure out why everyone disappeared.
And 5 years later, the away team that was investigating their disappearances have started to disappear themselves.
So Geordi's catching up with Susanna Leighton, one of the other members of the away team, while he's drinking out of a test tube.
Geordi is interrupted by a call to the bridge, and the Enterprise is tracking a shuttlecraft stolen by one of the other members of the away team, who is taking it to the location of the starbase.
He refuses to respond, he's going too fast, and he ends up blown up.
They detect 2 other shuttlecraft on the planet, but no life signs.
When they head down to check it out, Leighton follows some weird footprints, and when Geordi finds her, she says she can feel the other crew members and starts to freak out.
They take her to sickbay, and Beverly says she had a reaction to something, but they can't figure out what it is, and she seems normal. But when she talks to Geordi out in the hall, her hands start twitching.
What if what happened to the others is happening to me?
You don't know that.
Data discovers some alien skin cells in a torn uniform, and the footprints aren't from any known species. Geordi and Leighton are watching the old tapes, and she feels compelled to go back to the planet.
I like how you call them tapes.
It was dumb at this point that the crew didn't do anything about it, because they saw another member of the away team literally blow themselves up trying to get back to the planet, but they just keep letting her walk around, despite everything she's saying and doing.
And did no one else have the idea of examining the footage further? It seems like nobody's actually trying to do anything to solve the mystery. She flips out again, and begins undergoing physical changes this time.
I get that Geordi is concerned, but I don't know if he should be touching her and stuff.
Yeah, it was pretty gross.
Beverly makes the connection that the other crew members had transformed into these things, and Geordi is next. His bioscan shows nothing wrong, but we've seen before that there are alternate non-procedural scans they can take when there's stuff they don't understand, and I hope that they did those and just didn't tell us about it.
Beverly does at least say at one point that the chance of transmitting whatever she has is very unlikely.
But she doesn't know what it is. How does she know that?
Yeah, that's true. And when she tells Geordi that he may be next, he reacts like he hadn't figured that out already.
The only thing I do know, Geordi, is that it's very possible that you will be next.
Leighton had been feeling compelled to return to the planet, and Geordi comes up with a plan to prevent that from happening to him.
They tell the computer to monitor his movements and tell Geordi to report any symptoms. But they know that they can't detect the alien life signs, so that part doesn't sound like a very good plan. And Leighton was in denial about all of her symptoms until she collapsed, so that doesn't sound like a very good plan. And they don't assign anyone to physically watch Geordi as a failsafe, so that doesn't sound like a very good plan. Leighton is getting worse, and then I got super annoyed when Beverly said they could have done additional non-procedural scans, but they just didn't. Ugh.
Yeah, I had the same reaction.
We're going to examine any abnormality we find, no matter how insignificant it seems.
Geordi keeps going over the footage and finds a mysterious shadow. He has the holodeck recreate the scene as much as it can from the footage. I liked how the computer told him how limited and potentially inaccurate the extrapolated information in the simulation would be, and how he had to be very specific with how he worded his questions in trying to find the source of the shadow.
He does some good detective work. I like that this show was still made in the era where it was acceptable for a AAA TV show to have actors stand as still as possible when the simulation was frozen. Earlier times, man.
He finally gets the computer to create a form that would generate the shadow, but he begins mutating before he can examine it. Beverly finally finds a microorganism in Leighton's thymus that is changing her DNA to match its own.
They manage to surgically remove it, and then after the procedure, and while she's in recovery, then Beverly decides to tell other people about it and suggests that maybe they should tell Geordi too.
I did like that the surgery is immediately successful instead of dragging it out for half the episode like I expected.
And of course, Geordi is missing, which again is why it would have been a good idea to have someone watching him, and they set the computer to monitor him. But who is it reporting to? Why didn't it alert anyone when it couldn't read his life signs anymore? These people are all morons.
Beverly says that if he has mutated the same way Leighton did, he may not be detectable by the sensors, which didn't make any sense because he's still going to be reacting to the environment in some ways. He's going to be giving off either heat or breathing or something.
Well, we also seen that in The Hunted when What's-His-Face was walking around and they couldn't find him.
It's still dumb.
And Geordi transports off the ship. But how can the transporter detect what to transport if it can't detect him?
It would have to pick up his molecules to transfer the pattern, so yeah.
Lighton is recovering and reveals that it wasn't a parasite, but an organism's reproductive method of inserting their DNA into a living host. But isn't that the same thing as a parasite, pretty much?
Yeah, it's still a type of parasite. It didn't make any sense.
I mean, I don't know science, but it seems like I could be a doctor on this show.
They are unable to find Geordi from the Enterprise, and Picard says they have 1 hour before the changes are irreversible, even though it seemed like Lighton was transforming for much longer and was still curable. At one point, Worf says,
"We are adjusting sensors to read Commander LaForge's absorption spectrum, but it will take several hours."
And I didn't understand why it would take so long. I would think that would take just a few seconds to program in there.
Yeah, they already have all the data from Lighton. Should be pretty easy.
I also liked how Michael Dorn struggled to get that ridiculous line out.
They beam down with Lighton, since she still can detect the life forms, and she manages to convince Geordi, who looks like an anthropomorphic laser quest, to return to the ship.
I thought the reveal scene where they first find the creatures was goofy, but I thought the fact that they did the effect in camera was cool.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting visual.
And then Beverly directs them to beam Lighton and Geordi back up. But again, how would that work if they made a huge point about how they can't detect Geordi yet? It would have made way more sense to send down a shuttle.
Later, when Geordi is recovering in sickbay, they say that the other 2 crew members below are too far gone.
And to protect anyone else who might encounter this organism in the future, Picard decides to blow up the planet. They actually put out warning beacons, which I'm glad they actually mentioned this time, because it seems like a lot of the time they don't even talk about it. Identity crisis. Overall,
This was yet another mystery episode. It seems like we've gotten a lot of those lately, but I thought this one was better than Night Terrors or Devil's Due or Clues. The mystery itself was intriguing, and the episode didn't drag out in how they tried to figure it out. And having the danger be that it appears as if whatever happened will happen again was very effective. I really, really liked the scene where Geordi was trying to figure out the source of the shadow in the holodeck. I thought it was really creative, and it made sense in the way it played out. The explanation in the end for what was actually happening was more interesting than I expected, although that might be because usually it's very disappointing. But a lot of aspects of how they got there and the whole not being able to find them on the scanners didn't make any sense, and they seem to forget about that sometimes. And the solution to everything was, of course, a bit too simple. I thought the weak points of the episode, mostly the things that didn't make sense, really dragged it down, but the parts that worked really well. I gave it a B-.
you really thought this was better than those other episodes?
I did.
I gave it a C-. I liked the idea, but I did feel that it dragged after a while. This one could have used some sort of B-plot. It seemed like a lot of their decisions were pretty stupid and only served to keep moving the story forward, but I also liked Geordi's investigative procedure a lot. And I'm also glad that we didn't have to deal with another Geordi romance thing. It's nice to get an episode centered around him that doesn't have to deal with that too. And it seemed weird that after discovering how the organism worked, they ejected it from Lighton, but didn't do any more follow-up for pure scientific study. Isn't this a new life form? Isn't that why they're out there? Once the danger element is removed, I would think there would be some sort of standard Starfleet procedures in place. I thought it was pretty okay.